Hello and welcome to the first panel of the Miskatonic Repository Convention 2025. We are extremely excited that you're here. We're extremely excited to be here. I'm T.A. Newman, the council chair of the Shoggoth, the organizing party of the Miskatonic Repository Con. And very quickly, before we started, and I hand you over to someone who knows what they're doing, that's Evan, I just wanted to say a huge thank you, firstly, to all of you that are here, every single person that is running a game, that is playing in a game, that has been in the chat talking about what's going on, but also to the Shoggoths that are voluntarily organizing this entire convention as well, giving up time to do that. They are absolutely amazing. Obviously, there's the wonderful Evan Perlman who's with us here right now. XP Lovecat, Al Diesel Smith, Marek Galankia. There is an amazing team of Shoggoths, and the wonderful Stu Sellens, who is our newest Shoggoths, and I kind of tag along with the team. But also this year, and this is so important to me to mention this because they've been crucial in creating what we're doing now, is our wonderful Twitch producer team, which is Don't Stop Me Now, who is currently producing this broadcast you're watching now, the wonderful Steve Anderson, also known as Tall Halfling, and the beautiful Cosmic Outpost, who will be, all three of them are helping put together all the panels and events over the next few days. So welcome to Miskatonic Repository Con 2025. And I'll be quiet now until Evan asks me a question. Evan, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. It is, I think, for most of us, the end of a long week, and I hope we can kind of relax and unwind and talk about one of our favorite things to do, which is to develop our scenarios. And when at some point, right, in the writing process, you've got to actually go out and show it to people and figure out if it's working. And we call that process playtesting. And so we have invited some experts on both sides of the playtesting table here to find out, how they do it, what works for them, what doesn't work for them, when you start and when you finish. So I'll just go in order at the top of the screen here. I'll go ask you to introduce yourself and tell us very briefly, if you had to pick like 5 words at most to describe your playtesting style. So we'll go to Jade first.
Oh, cool. First, my playtesting style. I am very good at pivoting and turning whatever they throw at me into something fun.
Great. Yeah, and we'll come back to that when we talk about how you kind of iterate during playtesting, right? And use that to build and enhance the scenario. And could you just introduce yourself also briefly? I know we have bios floating around, but
I describe myself as a creative firestorm and a writer first, a gamer second. It's a very interesting trait to have in this particular group. I write and publish and run my Call of Cthulhu scenarios. I think I published my 7th one in December. No, sorry. Wrong time frame. August.
Excellent. And Perry, over to you.
Hello, I'm Perry Clark. I guess what I would say for mine is improving a section that never even existed and you didn't even realize. I just made it up in the moment.
Yeah. Excellent. And David?
Hi, I'm David. You probably see me around on various Discord servers, but yeah, I like to playtest on a reactionary, spontaneous, and minimalistic basis. I think that's what 3 of the 5 words
that's
summarized
fair.
so far.
Yeah. Very good. All right. So what I'd like to dig into first, I think, David, this was a question that you had while we were prepping for the panel, is when does everyone start?
I apologize.
No, it's welcome. When does everyone start playtesting? By which I mean you're working on your scenario. You may have a full first draft. You may, like some other friends of the Playhouse, you may just have 3 words on a bar napkin and you go from there. Where do you feel comfortable going out for a first playtest? And we'll start with David since it was your question.
Well, that's a great question. No, but in all sincere here, I think there's a there's a clear level that if you want to publish a scenario, you have a rough draft, you have an idea in mind, and at some point there's that level of like, oh, you play that with your home group, you play that with a couple of people, and you're like, I think there's more to that. And you write down a couple of notes like that work well with my home group, and you write those notes down, and then you're like, okay, so can I make this a scenario? And I think then becomes the process of, do I add locations? Do I add NPCs? Do I add various other things to that kind of note section? Or do I just try to do the same thing again and see what happens then? And I think what I want to say outright is one of the biggest and most helpful tools that I had in my writing experience so far is just record the sessions. And if you have the permission of the players to record the sessions, it is so much easier if you ask them up ahead and say, like, can I record the session? I don't know where this is going, but like it might help me write this up as a scenario. It is so much easier in the long run to kind of create something after that when you run the second, third, fifth time. And you have that kind of listen in to the first time you ran it and like, oh yeah, that was great, but they made in my head, a wrong decision. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll talk. You raised a couple of really good pieces. One is tools that really help to support playtesting. We'll come back to that. And two, I really like this idea of wrong decisions, and I think we'll drill into that too. Like, what are we watching for in a playtest? Perry, I think I know for a fact that you've been developing a scenario. Can you talk about at what point you felt comfortable going out for a playtest with it?
So I'm a plotter than pantser.
Mm-hmm. These are NaNoWriMo, I think, specialist terms we may need to explain to the wider world.
Well, I don't know, just even if you list some of the novelists, even comic book ones, is that I develop what my plot is. I develop what are the key points that need to happen, and what are those high moments? What is maybe that particular piece of clue evidence that I'm going to be using and so forth. So I know what those key points are. I just don't always know what's connecting them. And that's when I start pantsing. And that's the improv moment. That's the session where I'm developing it with my players. But I always know what are the key places I need to get to. And if I have essentially a start and I have an end, once I'm satisfied with those starting and endings and what may be the middle, that's when I start moving towards playtesting.
Excellent. And Jade?
Very similar to how Perry does it. I do a lot of plotting, where I know the key places. I know the start, the middle, and the end. I know where they're supposed to go. But every now and then, the players will throw something different at you, and that's fine. So how do I know when I can start playtesting? I'll have the investigator sheets. I'll have some stats for NPCs or whatever they're going to be going up against. So the basic plot and the scenario train, but I have to prepare for going off the rails. So be open.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that as well. And I want to introduce, sometimes I exercise my moderator privileges to answer the questions as well. So I'm going to introduce two methods that I have heard of and love very dearly. If you feel like you're a very strong improviser, if you're more on the pantsing side, as Perry was putting it, you can follow the strategy of our friend Mav, who tends to have three words or three lines on a bar napkin and just go from there. And there you're trying to figure out, is this a workable concept? Does this get players excited? Do I feel like I can drive this somewhere? And that's a great place to start. And then our friend of the program, Bridget Jeffries, has also talked about the spaghetti on the wall method, where you have a bunch of kind of loosely related concepts, but you don't yet have the strong through line in the scenario. And so you kind of throw things out there and see what catches players' interest and where they drive it. And then you kind of reverse engineer into your plot from those pieces that are interesting. So that's really cool. So we've reached a place in our development where we're ready to go out for a first play test. And what I want to start to get at is, what are you looking for in these playtests? And we've talked a little bit about finding places where players get it wrong. We've talked about, build taking the narrative and building on that. Um, what specific things are you watching for, and are you trying to direct your playtest towards when it's you at the table, when you're acting as the keeper for your own playtest? And we'll go back the other direction. I'm just going to keep going back and forth like windshield wipers. So we'll go to Jade first there.
Repeat the question one more time. Is this the one like,
Yeah.
Are you looking for what's the value of the type of feedback that you're getting, or what are you looking for in the feedback?
So yeah. So I guess what are you trying to get out of it? What is the most important kind of feedback? So from like, just as an example, for me, when I playtest, the main thing I want to verify is that I don't have anything that's misleading the players and sending them into a direction that I have nothing, that's irrelevant. If there's no like really derailing red herrings and they're not stuck saying I have no idea what to do here, then I consider that a successful playtest, and I've gotten what I need. Other people have different objectives or are looking for support or looking to stress test different parts of their scenario.
The first thing that I've looked for during the playtest from the players is if they're having a good time. And if they're sitting there with confused faces, or even if they're on their phones, I'm not doing what I should be doing. I need to be engaging them more. Away from the table, the other things that I look for, it seems like a given, but I need to stress, you need the contact info. This is also going to be hopefully your further playtest group. Maybe you want to create a mailing list to send them info, especially if you are playtesting online. And collect everything that they say to weed through it at another time.
I recall that we have another person here, Newman. You seem like you're very excited, so I want to kind of throw it to you as a special treat for the man of the hour here.
Usually in these situations, I take notes, as David knows this. When we're in these situations together, I'm scrawling notes. I think what Jade is saying is absolutely bang on about the kind of you're looking for the fun of the players. I think there's 4 things that you kind of want to tick off as you go along in this, and I having had a very similar conversation with Mav about the napkin, 3 words on a napkin, that terrifies me. I think that's so brave. I think when I first came into this, I was very much I've written a novel just to back up whatever you do. I think I'll be able to kind of get around. And that was, almost unmanageable, I think, going forward, especially wanting to produce more work and refine your work. And I think I'm getting closer to where Mav is. But, we can all just dream, can't we? We all want to be Mav one day. The 4 things I've kind of got down that I think lead off what Jade was saying is fun. I want to make sure that they're having fun, and I guess that incorporates like being involved in the mystery aspect of this, the scenario for Call of Cthulhu, and that's something that I always love. Is obviously your handouts, clues, you're following that kind of trail. Clarity, the clarity of those clues. You want them to feel the reward of discovering something or working out something, but if the stepping stones aren't there to allow them to do that, then you've created a load of clues in narrative that they'll never find, which is a great way to look at your playtesting. The success they get with that in terms of actually following the story, because they are there to kind of story to the game, to have fun with it. And then I love creating an atmosphere. I love playtesting the atmosphere that the game actually creates. But I think, I remember creating something, and I think it was actually, I playtested it this time last year actually at MRCon, and on the spot they were just like, well, how do we challenge the thing? And I was like, what are you looking for? And they were like, well, we're looking, we need a gun. I was like, yeah, where are you looking? They're like, under the table. I was like, what? There's a gun. There's a because I hadn't considered that, simple things. So that's something that I very much kind of think is, you see the wood for the trees kind of thing. So fun, clarity, and success for the players. They're key things, I think, to track through playtesting.
Well, thank you. That's really helpful. All right, and to Perry.
So I probably started with a slightly different places. As I said, I try to plot my story. Is my plot working with the players from start to finish? Can they follow the points? Fun is number two for them. But it's like, did it show a consistent idea going from start to finish? The game that I'm right now working on for Black Goat scenario, originally started, I was trying to do a 4-hour con game, and quickly as we were playing it, we came to realize it needed to be longer. And so then I began trying to figure out how to make that, fill in that gap so that these acts that I wanted to have happen work. Once I sort of had that, and again, I had consistency. I wasn't having to keep creating and improving entirely new sections, which several more sections ended up coming in there. When I start having more playtests where I'm having a consistent result and I can move down into smaller things like creating the gun under the table, that's when it's moving forward for me. So I might be doing 5 or 6 playtests just to figure out where those parts are and how my brain works with either complexity or the materials. But it starts with figuring out, does the plot work? Then as the player's having fun, because it's also that statement of, I also write for myself. So if I'm not having fun with the plot, are the players going to be having fun with the plot?
Yeah, that's very important, and I want to get to David, but then we're going to come back to a couple of critical things you just said.
Mm-hmm.
I think I definitely agree with Perry here. One of the critical points is like plot-wise, right? What is it that you want to playtest? Is it the scenario? Is it the pre-gen characters that you provide with the scenario? Is it the overall kind of atmosphere that you want to create with the scenario? I think there are various avenues that playtesting can go in, and it depends on what you want to achieve. But one of the major things that I found is kind of very crucial, at least in my perspective, is the player hook. So like one of the main things that I look into is like, I have the rough scenario draft kind of lined out. I know it goes from A to B to C. Like it might go through various avenues, but overall, the players will need to go through challenges and they will need to kind of talk to each other. They will need to kind of negotiate and they will need to interact with NPCs. The main question is like, who are those characters that are going through all of this? And yes, you write scenarios in an idea that you usually want to have them ubiquitous to kind of where they're coming from. You can drop any character that you want, sure. But at least in my perspective, I write my scenarios in a way that there's a certain idea of the characters that kind of run through the scenarios, that have experienced certain things and have kind of a background and have a connection to the setting. And I think I tend a lot of time of my play testing goes into connecting the players to the story. And that is for me very important. Like if my story hook and idea is okay and I know it works, the main thing that I focus on is keep the players interested, keep the players investigative in like their surrounding and make them interested about their surrounding. And that's one of the main things that I focus on.
Yeah, and that's really important. And we have actually a question from the chat from Kishaja, I will assume. But it's, what it boils down to is, a number of you have mentioned making sure the hooks work, making sure that there's engagement there. And you've got, this beautiful scene in your head, that this is going to be the high point of the scenario. It's going to be full of horror, and you get it to the table and it just lands with a thud. Or you set up a really interesting hook that has a big sign on it saying, this is the cool mystery, pursue this. And the players are just not biting. Talk about, do you scrap those? How do you get sufficient feedback in a playtest to know whether to drop those pieces that aren't working or how to rewrite them. And I think let's start with Jade.
So for this particular question, if you see me leaning forward, I'm actually writing a lot of notes down because this is all very good information. One of the points that was brought up is if you are playtesting and you are not having fun, then your players won't either. But sometimes I get really excited about my work. I'm not paying as much attention to my players as I should. It's incredibly important to ask them for their feedback. They might not feel comfortable giving it if you do not ask them, and you need to show your interest in what they have to say. I had no idea. I had 2 players that wanted to drop out because I didn't have audio-visual stuff. That they were not being stimulated in their way. This is how their brain works. This is how they latch onto scenarios. And I'm like, oh, you want more of that? So I was very excited about that. It's also very difficult to weed out what playtesters bring and not add just for the consistent players. Sometimes your playtest group, if you're doing a sweeping campaign or a multi-session, some players are more exuberant and they bring a lot more to their characters. I have, from an author's perspective, written into kind of a bottleneck for the campaign. And I had to pull out of that because it got very character-centric and character-focused. And it was sort of driving the plot. And I should not do that. It should be more open so that other people can bring in their own characters and take on this journey. So in my publications, I actually had to write in, okay, if you're the keeper and they're bringing in their own characters, these are the few modifications, and then they can just run and have fun with it. But I would advise, don't do that. Even though my brain always does that. And I have to get away from that.
And
That's part of it, yeah.
Yeah. And Perry, I know that you've gone through this process recently. How did you kind of make those determinations, deciding what to keep, what to drop, what to try to fix?
Well, I mean, obviously there's some stuff that's gone on to the editing side of this versus the play side of it. But in my case, I don't actually have a consistent group to play test with. So I have essentially every time I've done a play test, it has been with entirely new people, entirely never knowing what their neural developments are. So each group is its own micro moment of seeing, again, what's proven to be consistent and working amongst each table versus what needs to be brought in extra. Because again, the scenario as I would run it, again, if I'm the one running it, there's all these extra things that I would put in there. But knowing that I'm turning it into something that's written, one of the, as I think the saying is, kill or drown your darlings. You got to be willing to do that. And again, what am I getting consistent feedback through each of the different tables that I've done a playtest with people who have no idea or any relation to what it is other than that snapshot moment of the game, what's consistently going through. That's the stuff I'm keeping.
I had one addendum to that, my perfect solution, because I remind you, I consider myself a writer first and a gamer second. When I leave the table, my NPCs don't stop talking. I write novels and publish them. So there's always that.
And I consider myself the gamer, trying to be the writer.
Newman, where do you put yourself in the gamer writer spectrum, and how does that impact how you kind of mesh playtesting and editing?
So I think one of the things I do is I do love the improvisational side of things. I'm coming from a place of being an actor for many years and then kind of going into teaching acting and working as a voice actor. So that's always been a part of what I'm doing. But one of the things, listening to everybody else, and again, I always feel that I should be public about how much I recognize my own faults in some of the practices that I have. But I think some of the strength I've had in playtesting over the last few years, and it might seem like I'm just giving somebody else the job to do, but getting somebody else to run my game, run my scenario, because they're going to find the things that I don't, and that knowledge that you keep in your head that isn't necessarily in the book or isn't in the draft or isn't in the whatever. If Perry runs my scenario for me, he's going to go, man, you didn't put the gun under the table. And I'll be like, okay. So I think also getting people to run your material that's not you, keepers that actively probably keep it differently from you as well, is probably a really smart move, because it's going to force your scenario to go through that crucible and become stronger as a product of that process. But saying that, I when I'm running games, I know I'll go off the rails and like an NPC will become my best friend, and I'll be like, hey, here's this guy again. They're like, no, we're not interested. I'm like, damn, I love playing that guy. But yeah, I do think that getting somebody else to run your scenario is a great way to refine and strengthen what your scenario is as a product, as a game.
Yeah. I want to ask David, Perry, Jade, do you give your scenarios to other keepers to run? And if so, what, if any, kind of instructions do you give them? I remember very fondly, I had someone ask me to run the scenario, and they gave me like a really professional looking form. They're like, tell me if you finished it in time. Tell me if you got stuck anywhere. I want you to really focus on how scene X, Y, and Z played out. Don't tell me what you would have done differently. I'll figure it out if there's a problem. And I was like, wow, that's really clear as far as what they want for feedback. So I'm just, I'm interested if that's a step that you guys do, and then how you manage that if you do give it away. David, I guess first.
I mean, I definitely do that. So when I have a concept of my scenario and I have a rough draft that I feel comfortable enough that I feel like others can read and can interpret enough of my methodology from how the scenario should run from, I do send that off, and I will send it usually with simple tools like Google Forms. I want to know, X, Y, Z, and I list a lot of questions, and like for the GM side, can you answer those questions? Did it run on time? Did it, did the NPC X, Y, and Z feel like it was a hindrance or it was a help? It depends on what you want to know from your playtest, right? It depends strongly on where you are in your playtest scenario.
I'm in an interview.
If you are in the
Can I call you back? Are you okay?
Yeah.
If you are in the very early stages of your playtesting, it obviously becomes
Oh, I understand. No
an
problem.
important question of
Love you.
trying to understand the player side of the scenario, and then later on it becomes a question of how does the GM incorporate kind of those questions into the scenario. And I do have kind of these waves of questionnaires that I send out with my drafts of scenarios that I send out to people that I trust, and like, hey, this is the draft. I'm not going to tell you any more about it. These are a couple of questions that I want you to answer after the game. This is a questionnaire that I want you to send to the players. If they answer, great. If not, okay, I can only ask that much. But usually that helps me narrow it down. And I think one of the things that I want to stress and mention here is I feel like playtesting is an evolution. There are several steps in playtesting that you have to go through, at least for myself, that you feel comfortable enough to releasing something to a wider public, to somebody that you feel like, oh, he is like, he's running games on various servers and whatnot, and I feel comfortable enough to send him a draft to kind of playtest this without any further kind of restrictions. Just, can you give me a feedback on my scenario? Done.
Great.
And that is a very good kind of level of getting feedback when you kind of build up on this on a stage by stage level, I think.
Yeah, and I want to check in with Jade and Perry. Do you do external farming out playtesting? How do you kind of manage that? Is it very systematic? Is it like, oh, just kind of tell me your vibes, or do you do all of that and it just depends on and it just depends on the moment. Either Jade or Perry, whoever has strong feelings.
First, I wanted to apologize. I clicked mute and it did not mute me for that.
That's okay.
call. I sincerely apologize. I'm also
Totally okay.
multitasking, trying to figure
Don't worry.
off the notifications. So
Jade,
you
it was
don't
wholesome.
hear
You
Discord
telling your
pinging
daughter you love her. It was wholesome and lovely. It was like midday TV. It was lovely.
I have a new driver child, so she's stuck in traffic.
Oh, yeah.
Let me know. It is
That's a
on
priority.
mute, but I was not here. I apologize to David. That was not cool. I tried the questionnaire.
Don't worry.
It didn't quite work out for me. But hopefully I have sent my stuff out to other GMs, other keepers. I've gotten limited feedback. Tia, I think you mentioned recordings. My then husband, now ex, I gave him my first scenario and he ran it for a completely different group. He's one of the few people that gave me feedback on my first scenario. He gave me a recording of it. That was insanely helpful. XP Lovecat not only play tested it, but also put up a review for my first scenario. Unfortunately, she had the first version and not the newer version. I'm like, I wish she would have play tested the other one. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. So in brief, that's how I feel about it. If you're lucky enough to have a solid group to play test, it's awesome. If you don't, like what Perry was talking about, find any avenue that you can. I'm still play testing a solo adventure. I published it in 2022, I think. And I'm delaying putting it in print because a choose your own adventure is incredibly difficult to play test and iron out all the little bits.
Yeah, we're gonna come back to that extremely important question of when do you stop playtesting? And so we know that one extreme is you stop playtesting 3+ years after it's already been published. So we'll kind of put a pin in that.
What do you mean it's published? What the heck?
David, there was a question in the chat for you. If you could just briefly talk about some of the specific questions that you have in the questionnaire. I do want to keep it moving along. But if they're marquee ones.
So one of the main, again, personally for myself, one of the main things that I kind of focus on in writing scenarios is also like the connection towards the scenario. So one of the main things that I ask is the pre-gen kind of sufficiently explained to you to run the scenario? Like if I run this at a convention, if I give you one sheet of paper that explains the pre-gen, does it explain the character to you? And can you run or can you play the scenario with it? Other questions are like, have you been satisfied with playing that character? Is there anything else that you kind of want to be involved in? And then I think there are very simple questions of like, how much did you like the scenario the way you played it? Honestly, that is a very simple question that you can send out to your players, either in a Google form or whatever media that you use, anonymously to answer like, did you like the scenario truly, without being kind of honest about your background, who you are, anonymously to the GM. Did you like the scenario? If you didn't like it, why didn't you like it? Are there specific points that you think need to be improved, either by improving location description or handouts or something like that? And I think one of the main points that you run into trouble when you create your first scenario, you're over-explaining, most likely, locations. You're over-explaining handouts. You're over-explaining kind of conversation with NPCs. It is fine because you're trying to kind of convey your story the first time that you're kind of writing it down. And it's going to be okay. And the main thing that you need to be okay with is that people tell you, I didn't need to hear all of this. I only needed to hear the last sentence of your explanation. And that is all I needed to know. Great. You take that as an affirmation and as a kind of point in your feedback. And I think one of the things that is often missed is like feedback can be taken seriously, can be taken lightly, but it always should be taken seriously, because people just tell you something. I didn't like, I liked, I didn't like, or whatever. Just think about what that means. And if you have a way to collect that feedback from your players, that is perfect. And if you can collect that feedback based on scenarios, and you can kind of comprise that based on, gameplay and so forth, and whatsoever, you have a track record of how to improve your scenarios. That is just perfect.
And Perry, I think David, you started talking about this, but Perry, I'm going to go to you specifically. I'm going to take a kind of a jump shot here. We have a question from the wonderfully named Gooby Chicken, which is just a fun phrase to say, which is, how do you promote players to feel comfortable expressing honest feedback? Perry, I go to you because I think this is very much in your line of training and expertise. And I want to highlight both, getting people comfortable to express negative feedback if they have it, and also, sort of getting around the issue where someone is just happy to be there and they're going to love it no matter what. And so maybe prompting them to go, honest from the other direction.
Right. Because this gets into a combination of one, having discernment, and then the other side of going back to kill and drown your darlings, not to be overly attached to your work. Since, again, in my case, like I said, I go to multiple different tables. I've never met some of these people. So I don't have any type of deep connection to what their feedback is. But equally, I'm trying to take their feedback constructively. And that's where the discernment comes in being able to tell what is really more about that personal thing versus what is really the constructive material that's a legitimate problem. And that's a concern I have with my games as a person of color writing games that are also going to be centric to person of color experiences. And so I've also got to put in that sort of historical knowledge that might need to go into the piece for people to understand why certain changes and certain things are happening. So my first scenario, which is still in works, one of the complaints that came back from a playtest team was that they didn't like being trapped in this one car on this train. And it's like, okay, yeah, I hear you're not happy about it, but guess what? That's where the historical horror comes in. You're literally stuck in this one car until most everyone else is dead on the train. How do you deal with that horror? That is the type of horror and scenario that most people who have the privilege and freedom to walk around don't stop and think about. So there I have to discern what is actually the most useful information. What is the information now I need to provide in my historical context for why you did not have the access to this full train? And what is this just the part of, okay, this is just your personal, the mood you were in that day.
Yeah. These are using discernment to figure out what's their own personal hangups, what is, there are scenarios, Perry, you and I have written scenarios like this where if someone says I'm uncomfortable because of the historical context, we say, good, that is the point. And there are some who say I don't like it because it's icky. It's like, well, okay, do I need to change this, or is this just not for you? And if I put adequate marketing up front, you'll know it's not for you. Newman, and have you had issues with people holding back or not, not knowing how to express what they needed to express to you?
I think maybe now. Okay, so cards on the table. I'm very, very lucky in regard to. I've got wonderful people around me. Both in home games, but also very much in my online life, which with the Miskatonic Playhouse, I've got a very kind of lucky team of people there that, well, they know me and they know that they can tell me honestly, and they know that I'll cry. And but when we get through the first 6 hours of those tears, that I'll start to digest that information. But I am very lucky in that respect that I've got those people around me, and I think having that is really important. I think I've played tested games before, and much like what people are saying here, maybe I didn't actually approach it right, and I think everybody should always consider everything that they're doing is part of a process. There's never I've got this. there's always a learning curve. There's always something to be done. Every different group of players, every different play test, every different keeper, every different whatever. There's always something to change. But I think I've had players before that have just gone, yeah, it was great. It was great. Thanks, Newman. And I worry that it's because they kind of go, oh, I'm playing Newman's game, so we're just going to say it's good. I write some crap, genuinely. I know I do. I know I do. But like I said, luckily I've got people around me that go, that's not very good writing. Oh, that doesn't work very well. We need to work on that. And I think maybe because of my teaching background, I'm quite open to that. I'm quite open to going, well, how do we make it better? You know, if the experience isn't right, or the clue isn't right, or the scene isn't right, or I listening to Perry then about that experience, about talking about the car and the historical context of the characters. So I've that kind of, I find that just so interesting, and I wish I want to kind of almost just say, Perry, talk to me about that for an hour. That I think that's something that I'd really love to hear more about. But my first scenario, I started the characters in a prison on Dartmoor, and their guests, they get invited to the prison, they're on a bus, they get into the prison, and then they're in this room. And I ran that scenario so many times playtesting. First time, they're out, they're exploring information, that's the group it was. Second time, lots of role playing, and they were happy to role play their socks off until, you nudge them along and go, guys, leave the room. Work out what the horror is. Come on, guys, you don't even know what a horror is yet. But I remember running it once, and the players were just stuck. They didn't know that they could leave the room and do those things. Completely different context to what Perry's talking about, but it was still that idea of there needs to be something there. So yeah, I think probably not answering your question, Evan, but I think there is a reality there of I think I know I'm lucky having people around me that can challenge me, and I think if you've got people that can positively do that around you, that's a wonderful thing to have. If you haven't, it's something to seek, and there are people in this community who are amazing and generous with doing that. So speak to the rest of the community, find people who are willing to tell you that certain things can work in different ways.
Great. I want to check in with Jade, and then I have one big question, and then probably a couple of small questions, and we'll kind of round out the evening with that. So Jade, how do you elicit real feedback, useful, honest feedback?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to loop it all into the same question. How do you make people comfortable to even give you this feedback? If it's a face-to-face thing, sometimes I provide food. If it's at my house, I almost always provide food. I also tell them you can modify the food. I don't care if you dump hot sauce on it or you don't even want to eat it. It's all good. You can bring your own food. So I make them comfortable in making their choices that way. Another way I can do it, especially if it's virtual like this, ask more than once. Make sure they know that you honestly want feedback, and you'll take whatever they will give you. And I will take it and I will set it aside and work it later. That's another question. But getting them comfortable enough to tell you, one thing that I did was I will talk about feedback that I have used from other players. For example, my group that is my constant playtest group, I call Girls' Night because they're all women. So when this went out and was played by another group, the feedback was, why are there so few men characters in your scenario? Yeah. Just change the pronouns. It's the same thing. So I did. All I did was I changed the picture, I changed the pronoun, exact same character, and I used that in my published version. You can choose either gender for several of the characters, and it's based on feedback. Some people were uncomfortable playing one gender versus the other. For whichever reason. And I take that into consideration. I take that seriously. And I offer that now as a feature.
Yeah, I just want to put in a quick plug for a panel that's coming up tomorrow, because we've bumped up a couple of times in the discussion now against helping players be comfortable with, historical realities, helping them be comfortable inhabiting different kinds of people. And we will have a panel tomorrow about how kind of history and diversity can work together to make your scenarios better. So if you want to dig into that with some authors who have some experience on that, please return tomorrow. Quick plug. Okay. Next question. I want to I want to start to think about how do you know when you're finished playtesting? This is something we've talked about a lot over the years. Is how do you know when you're done?
Never.
Right? Yeah, but you have to be right. I mean, the caveat is that this is not just for your own pleasure.
Do you have to be done? Because even if you publish, you will open it up to a much larger audience that will experience and playtest the game. And so you will, if you open up like comments or, feedback forms for those kind of games, you will actually get much more feedback after you publish it than even before you even publish it. Because yes, there's always the question of like, when do you publish? When do you finish the playtesting? Because there's no finishing of playtesting. And there's the 80-20 rule and whatever rules you kind of want to imply to it. But at some point, you need to publish it. You need to put it out to the masses. You need to give it out to people. And at some point, people will play it. And then you will get feedback. Even after you publish it and you're 100% confident that this game is 100% certified for everything that you accounted it for. But then people will get back with comments and they will say like, I don't think you've considered the 1980s Nokia phone in that scenario. So, you should reconsider the whole tech avenue of this.
And this is a lovely place to kind of stake out some positions here, because when I hit publish, it's because I'm sick of looking at it and I don't want to see it anymore on my computer. If someone
put it out there.
Yeah, but like, you might be comfortable iterating even after it's published.
Oh no, I'm not comfortable.
Oh, okay, good.
I need to put it out. But like, I know that I get more feedback from having it out there.
Yeah, well, that's true.
If I
People
stew
are
about
not shy
it.
to comment. Yeah. And unless it's like either something drastically wrong with your scenario or you accidentally, fat fingered and deleted a chapter, I'm like, thank you for your feedback. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm on to the next project. This was 6 months ago. Jade, where do you stop? When is it enough?
I am a detail-oriented person. It's never enough. I'm always tinkering. I am about to put out an errata on the website that I will be referencing back into any further republications, because I just ran my scenarios at BLFC, biggest little furry con in Reno, and some players came up with some really cool stuff I had missed, and some that's like, why didn't I think of that? It's literally a way to make the scenario shorter and better. Why wouldn't you need that? So never finished, always revising. Goes back to the question is, when is it ready? We already discussed that. The 80-20 rule, to be specific for people who do not know what that is, when it's 70 to 80% perfect, release it.
Yeah. Newman, do you hit publish and then think, oh, I'll put out some errata, I'll make some changes?
Do you know what any of this means, Newman?
Sorry, what's a playtest?
Right. So, sorry. Do we need to define 80-20?
I thought I did, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think you did. But this is a concept that comes up a lot, right? It's
I hear the Rainbow Dash's voice. 80% cooler. Yes.
Yeah. Newman, where's your personal line?
So in hindsight, looking back at some of my scenarios, when they've hit print on demand, I guarantee I'm the first person to spot the mistakes. I can't see them until it goes print on demand, and then as soon as you can't change them, and then you look at it and go, "Oh God, it's there, right there, first page, right there, second page." But it's a thing, Look, in reality, with publishing, I think you've play tested really well. You've written a really good scenario. There are things that are going to come up, and again, this has come, I think, with the maturity of, so perhaps not my first scenarios, but the maturity of writing, and I still have a hell of a long way to go, and learning from others. But I think there's going to be things that I'm never going to think of that go in my scenario. But if you can create those opportunities within your scenario to allow the keeper to fly with it, or that allow the investigators to kind of navigate those things, sometimes not giving the definition of what needs to happen in that moment, or not giving the direct route that they need to go, is the right thing, because it allows that freedom to happen. So you don't have to go back and go, oh, I didn't say that this is exactly where the gun was under the table, or I didn't say they had to go through this door. And I think that's come with a bit of maturity and experience for me in writing and in playtesting. And that it's almost with playtesting for me, it's getting to the point where I'm happy to publish, is maybe actually pulling back on a few of those over details that I overwrite in the first few stages, almost opposite to what we talked about with Mav doing with the 3-word napkin. And Mav and I have talked about that, and I said, oh my God, I'm so scared of doing that. And Mav challenged me with one scenario that I think, Evan, we were all a part of, to kind of do that. And I did it, and it scared the hell out of me. But I do think the idea of, if you can create that scenario in a way that when it's published, it gives that keeper and it gives those players the ability to play and find their way through it. You might not be in a position where you're going, oh my God, I've got to go back and change. Now, obviously, if there's key things there, like I spelt the name of the mythos creature wrong, or I didn't provide them with a handout that they need to be able to, navigate the 3-act structure that I've created for them. That's significant structural things that will need to be revisited. But the tiny details, as long as you're publishing a scenario, and this is for people out there that maybe are looking at first time publishing a scenario, as long as you're publishing a scenario that's got that solid story that you want them to be able to explore in their own way, you've got good advice for the keeper, and you've got opportunities for the investigators to explore. 80-20 rule, like Jade said, get on it, get publishing, let's play your game.
Yeah.
May I just add
please.
on to this, because it is about online publishing. So if you publish it via Drive-Thru RPG and all the other Miskatonic repository ideas, you have the opportunity to update your content. So even if it's not 100% perfect and you receive feedback throughout the first publishing round, you can update it. You can always update it to the point that you are comfortable enough and say this is my best and most recent content. I brought it out the way it is, but I kind of adapted to the feedback that you as a community provide to me. And I think that's one of the things that is pretty unique, that I love, that the community gives you feedback and they say, yeah, we like it, you should change that, or there's nothing to change, you're good, go into press.
I just want to we got to wrap up in about 2 minutes. I just want to do a quick hit. We had a question from Brain Flaps, which is, what do you do if you're playtesting with a group and one player is problematic and fights against the whole thing? So this is I would say not strictly a playtesting problem, but I want you to set expectations for your players at the beginning of a game, at the beginning of a campaign, at the beginning of a playtest, that we are going to abide by the Scott Dorward maxim, which is engage with the fucking scenario. Make that clear to them that this is a horror game. They will be expected to pursue the very obvious mystery that you put in front of them and get themselves in trouble. And if they don't want to do that, there are plenty of other games that suit that. Make this explicit in your playtest directions if you need to. If you're working with people you don't know or who haven't played Cthulhu before, make it explicit at your table. You can do a 3-second session 0 before playtesting, just to cover those kind of expectations. But absolutely a great question. If they are already at the table and giving you a problem, step away with them for 1 second, go through that, get them to give you an honest answer about whether they're willing to do that or not. If they're not, say, thank you very much, I'm sorry, this is probably not the game for you, but we'll catch you down the road.
So I have a slightly different take on everything we've been saying, which I do agree with. That question is an issue about table management, which is a fundamental skill that you will develop in time. What I want to go back to is about when is it done and finished?
Yes.
So I come from more the maximum of the statement of perfection is the enemy of good. And if you are trying to make it good, you will never, or should I say, if you're trying to make it perfect, you will never publish. You need it to be good. And one of the things that goes with good is whether or not you're feeling insecure about it. So yeah, you're going to work some more of those areas so you're feeling as secure as possible to that 70 or 80%. That's the key thing you're looking at, because no matter what, someone is always going to find something wrong. And and one of the biggest things you have to learn is someone is always going to be disappointed every day going on. It does not always have to be you.
Great. Yeah, really true. And I'll close just by saying this panel is part of the MRCon. The con is a celebration of our community here in the Miskatonic repository. And one of the things that I encourage you to do is to become part of that community and make friends or acquaintances with other authors, people who've published a lot. And if you're not sure, you're like, am I stuck in that 80-20 valley? Am I done? Send it to someone and say, hey, am I done? Right? And then if they say yes, just close your eyes and hit publish because you're done. It's okay, especially when you're new and you're not sure, or you just tend to be insecure. It's okay to outsource that. Let an experienced person tell you you're done and trust them. Thank you so much. We are at time. Can I ask everybody on the panel just to quickly, if you wish, to say, where people can find you in 10 seconds or less? We'll start back with Perry.
Well, I'll be quick. You can find me at my private practice, which is Untangle and Grow Counseling in San Francisco, California, Bay Area. You can also find my podcast, Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered, on any podcast player. I have played with Symphony Entertainment. I am actually a character on Silver Screens with the Old Wade Network, and you can also find me over at Apocrymatic Unlimited as the GM for Reunion of Threads.
Lovely. And David?
You find me as one of third of the Illusion Horror and Con, which is coming up in December 5th to 7th. The Illusion Horror Con.events. Anything you need to know is on the website. But yeah, we do a lot of things about anything horror TTRPG related, panels, discussions, analysis about games and actual plays. And yeah, you find me under Bitbook Chef on probably most of the social medias.
Excellent. And Jade?
I am Jade Griffin or Jade Griffin author pretty much everywhere on social media. You can also locate my works both on drivethroughrpg.com and on Amazon Kindle under Jade Griffin. And my website's super easy also. It's jadegriffinauthor.com.
Awesome. And Newman, the ubiquitous Newman, where do we find you?
You can find me in the seventh circle of whichever religion's held. No, you can find me all over the internet as TA Newman. You can find me MRCon. You can find me Miskatonic Playhouse. Jump on, type in TA Newman, and I'll say hi.
Great. Yeah. And I'm Evan Perlman. You can find me in the Symphony Entertainment Discord, the Miskatonic University Podcast Discord, on Facebook or on Blue Sky. And that's about it. Thank you very much, everyone. This was awesome. This was, I think we've begun as many great conversations as we finished tonight, but this is a never-ending process. And thank you guys for sharing your experience. I appreciate it.